Hi everybody! I hope you're all having a good day. I hope you're all smiling and enjoying your lovely day. So in this following tutorial, I'm going to be showing you on how to rig skirts and dresses inside of Blender. Since many people have asked me how I did with my main model, and since I had this commission from Alice, since I'm working on her model, basically, while I was working on rigging her dress, I was struggling a bit on getting some sort of workflow with the skirt rigging or just remembering how I did it. But eventually, I remember my workflow and I want to share it with you guys. So in case you guys want to rig skirts and dresses, you guys can be able to do it. So I'll basically give you the basically a base workflow to work with, because it really depends on the complexity of the dress, how, if you want to make the dress multi-layer and you want to do crazy stuff with it. It really just depends, but I'll just, I'll show you some basics. Now, I will say before attempting this tutorial, I remind you, please make sure to have prior knowledge to weight paint, because I might go into a bit more advanced stuff, but I'll try to make this at least beginner friendly as possible, so that way, in case you are a beginner 3D artist and you're jumping into more advanced stuff, I should be able to try to explain for you guys, but do keep in mind, we might go into some advanced stuff, but yeah. And let me go ahead real quickly to enable my screencast keys. In case anyone's curious, screencast keys is basically what allows me to have my mouse be presented here. So in case you struggle with hearing what I'm saying, you can just look at the screen below to see what I am inputting, so you can follow along a lot more easier. Now, with that being said though, let's go ahead and start off from the beginning. So if you are, if you're a Void user or you have a model in a different program and you want to put it in Blender. So for VRM models Void, there's a VRM import plugin. Link in description. I have all the resources, link in description. There's a VRM import Blender plugin that you can download, and I'll make sure to also put a tutorial on how to install the plugin. That way, if you want to put your Void model in Blender and be able to do all that stuff, with editing and all the crazy stuff, even exporting it into VRM format, if you do wish, the plugin should be able to do that. Although me personally, I always manually export my, I manually export the VRM file with Unity. But there's that. Now, if your model is from somewhere else, like let's say you're a VR chatter and your model was originally from Unity, if you can get the FBX file, that works. If it's like a prefab, that might be a little trickier, but you might want to use the UniVRM add-on to get your VR chat model outside of Unity, or even the FBX exporter add-on for Unity. So there's that. And for Source Filmmaker, be Source Tools, and so on and so on. I'll try to make sure to put all the resources in the description. It really just depends. I can't go over every single model type that exists, but that's just to give you an idea, like how do you put the model in Blender. If your model's already in Blender, you're already good to go. Now you just need to have a dress that you want to rig. So for instance, I've modeled this dress for Alice here. You might want to use a dress somewhere else, like another website, or you modeled your own. It's really up to you. I can't really go into every specific situation, but just to give you some insight on, just insight on like to start off with. But let's go ahead and begin with the rigging part, or going over the skeleton here. Now, for the skeleton, basically I have a skirt rig that looks somewhat like this, basically. Now, for this model, I wanted to keep it simple, because I didn't want to add too much on the skirt. I wanted to keep it as simple as possible, and if the person do wish to, let's say they do want to put them all in VR chat and they have someone else do it for them, this little rig should do the trick for VR chatters, I guess, if they want to put them all in VR chat. But for this skirt rig here, I kept it as simple as possible. So if you're using if you're primarily using VRM, you're using the VRM format to VTube with your model, I always recommend keeping the skirt rig as simple as possible, not too simple and not too complex, because the more bones you have, the more VRM spring bones tends to struggle a lot. So do keep that in mind. It might go the same with dynamic bones. You can still adjust the settings to work with like crazy amount of bones, like 15 times 20 bone count, which was one of my old models. It struggled a lot on VRM spring bones, but yeah, just to give you reference. Naming wise, I always named my bones somewhat basically skirt underscore 0 underscore 1, or you can name it dress underscore 0, whatever, basically. The 0 here is referring to the column that it's in, so 0 being the absolute front here, and then 1 would be like the chain, like the bone in the chain. So this one's 1, this one's 2, and so on. For this one, this will be column 1, bone 1, and also I also have to make sure, since I want to mirror the bones a lot more easier, I have the underscore R right here. So that way, if I, so let's say for example, I'm gonna go ahead and delete this bone, right? And with using the underscore R, it makes it a lot more easier for me to mirror it, so I can go to armature and symmetrize here, so that way it's automatically mirrored. But the first step is to, you know, make your rig however you want it. Don't be too crazy with it, don't be too little with the bones. Once again, it does depend on the model. If your model is super low poly, maybe yes, use little bones. If your dress is super duper long, you may want to use more bones. It's up to your judgment, really. But another thing as well, what I want to also say is that, let's say you have something like hair, right? And, you know, because you're going to be posing the bones a lot. I always recommend hiding the hair. So how I hide my bones is that I would basically just select the bones here, and I would press the H button, and basically that allows me to hide it. If I want to bring back the bones for like editing, I just do Alt H. You can also create what you can also do as well is create bone groups, which I highly recommend, because what bone groups do, well, we have to go pose mode for that, but basically what these groups do is that it makes selecting bones a lot more easier. So if you're trying to select just the skirt, what you can do is you can go ahead, select your skirt rig, right? Just want to show this before we do the weight paint part real quick. But once you select your skirt rig, right, you don't want to always constantly keep selecting the skirt rig through the whole massive hair or some other physics you might have. So basically you just make a group here, name it skirt, and you just assign this to that group. So in case you want to select that specific bone group, just click on select and it's already done for you. I always recommend this for, like, even if your model is only for VRM, if you're gonna do a lot of editing with a model, this bone group is a big convenience, especially if you have a lot of bones on the model. But now that we have that, basically, let me go ahead and hide this tail. Now that we have that, you know, going, we have the skirt rig, and we've also set up a bone group, so that way it makes it more convenient for us. Now we have to get into the whole weight paint. Now, as for weight paints, before anything, we'll start off with the dress here, and then we're going to talk about adding these accessories here. Now, basically, this really depends on your armature, really. So, I'm not sure how the best way to explain it, but I'm gonna try my best as I can. So, for instance, this model is a Vroid. This is a Vroid model. You can tell obviously by like a bit of the topology of the face and the structure. But basically, for Vroid model, they don't have the proper, like, they have the underscore R, but it's in the wrong place. It should have been like at the end. So usually for Vroid models, I always have to make sure that let's say for the dress here, that I always have to apply the mirror modifier ahead of time, like, or just already do it, you know, when I'm weight painting it, because Void Models, with the bone structure that they have, because it doesn't have the R at the, you know, at the end of the, you know, the naming, it doesn't properly mirror it. If it did, then if it did have the underscore R to indicate left and right at the end, it would have been a lot more easier. You wouldn't have to apply the modifiers, and Blender would kind of auto mirror it. But in this case, I will have to mirror, you know, I have to apply the modifier there. Now, I will say also, you can also just name it yourself though, but I know for a fact there are going to be some people that may not want to take a lot of time renaming the bones, so that way the underscore R could be at the end. So just for convenience, I won't do the whole renaming, but if you wish to make it convenient for you, I highly recommend renaming the bones. It will help a lot. It really will. Now, so let's go ahead and I'll also apply subdivision as well, so that way, because what we're going to do is we're going to do a weight paint transfer from the body to the dress, and then after that, we're gonna then separate the skirt here, and we're gonna rig that and then reattach it. So let's go ahead and start off with our body here. We're going to shift select, actually before we do that, select your dress, right, or the parts that you want to attach to your armature, because this is important. You'll need to make sure to attach it to the armature. You can add a modifier for the armature and register it manually, but I usually just select my dress, shift select the armature here, Control P, and then select empty groups. Empty groups basically means that it will attach the mesh, the dress or whoever mesh, into the armature. It'll automatically, you know, register the vertex groups, but it will not auto weight paint, so it still won't follow the model, and I'll show you. So it still won't follow the model basically, but it's already connected basically. And the reason why is because if I were to auto weight paint this dress to the rig right now, you will also the hair and the tail and the little cotton ball puffs here for the coat here, they will end up getting caught in the dress, and the dress will have a very terrible rig and it wouldn't be usable properly. So that's why I would do that as my first step. Now, the next step is to take the body, select your body, and shift select the dress, and we're going to do a weight paint transfer. So, do that. We're going to go to object mode here, and we're going to select on weight paint, and we're going to then go to weights, and we're going to click on transfer weights here. Now, I'll go ahead and disable my screencast keys for a second so you can see the settings. Now, these settings are based on Royal Sky's weight paint transfer tutorial, which I will leave in the description if you want to check him out. But basically, the settings he has is that vertex mapping will be at nearest face interpolated, the ray radius would be at 5 meters, I believe, and the source layers will be by the name. So that way it will read the actual vertex groups of the armature, and being able to transfer the vertex group information from the body to the dress. So once we have that, do a test on your model to make sure that the dress follows, and it should do basically that. So if you have a chest bone, it should also follow, and the thing is also, since we have the arms and the spine, moving with the dress, which is good. The thing is that the skirt rig is still not there, and that's what I'll get into. So, this is also a thing too that happens with if you're doing the weight paint transfer. Now, if by any chance you have like a very, a pencil skirt model, for example, something like this might be good for you, since like the dress would follow the legs, or I guess certain optimizations. But honestly, you know, this tutorial is not just about weight paint transfer. We're going over the skirt rig, so I'll show you that. Now, in order to basically have it wear the skirt, because we don't want the skirt to, you know, follow the legs. We want the skirt to follow the skirt bones. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select the vertices. So we'll go to edit mode, select the vertices that you want to be rigged to the skirt here, for the bones. And we're gonna go into weight paint mode. So Gav, you know, edit mode. And the way I Gav edit mode, by the way, and I'll bring the keys back, is that I toggle tab because it makes it easier. Unless you prefer going here at the top left and switching to edit mode all the time, that's your preference. But we're gonna go into weight paint mode, and we're gonna go ahead and click the vertice button up here. It looks like a cube outline with a dot to indicate vertices. We're going to use this so that way we can select the specific part we want to remove the weight paint, because the thing is, if we were to begin rigging the, you know, start like doing the skirt rig already, it will have some issues with stretching, because it will basically, it's overlapping in the weight paint, because it'll be rigged to the, because once again, the thing is that because right now it's rigged to the legs, if we were to auto weight paint the skirt to the skirt rig, it's trying to like fight itself, figuring out, is it going to the legs or is it going to the skirt, you know, the skirt rig. So to make it convenient for the dress, we have to remove the weight paint for the legs. So go ahead, basically in the object data, which is a triangle here, all you have to do is select the vertex group that, you know, involves the legs, and just remove it basically. Once again, it depends on your rig, depends on how long the dress is and such, but just remove the leg weight paint. And also you might want to also remove it for the spine and chest, just you know, for convenience sake, unless like, once again, depending on how you edit, maybe you might need a little bit, but I usually just remove it since it's all going into the skirt bones anyways. So yeah, but once we have that, or once we've done that, what we're going to then do is we're going to do an auto weight paint of the skirt here. And you can always do edits with it, so like, you know, if the auto weight paint does look kind of there's always ways to like manually modify, or kind of doing a little more automatic fixes for it, but up to you. It's up to you on what you want. But let's go ahead and get into edit mode on the armature. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically extract the skirt rig right here, and we're going to basically separate it. So we're going to press the P button and separate the bones, and this is so that way we can auto weight paint to the skirt. And you're also going to do the same thing with the mesh here. You're going to separate it as well. So we're going to do that. Now basically it's very simple. Just select mesh to the armature, Control P, and then select on automatic weights, and then give the, you know, test out the skirt rig to see if it works on you. Now the thing also to keep in mind too is while you know how like some people, because it depends on the rig, you don't want to do like this all the time, right? Like, you know, bending this manually, right? Like, you don't want to do that, right? There's actually an easier way of doing that, and it's there's a setting I'll show you. So let's go ahead and select these bones here, right? We're gonna click on top here, and we're gonna click on individual origins, and what that does is that instead of just doing just one piece like this, it'll basically be able to rotate each bone as their own. Like they have their own rotation movement, and basically it's a great way to test out skirts. So you can be able to, like, let's say go top view, and you can spin the dress like this and move it around like this, so you can kind of get an idea of what the physics are manually. Because keep in mind that when the VRM, like when you're adding like VRM spring bones or wiggle bones on Blender, or dynamic bones, or some physics, or even MMD with rigid bodies, or even Blender rigid bodies, keep in mind all these bones are going to basically work together, so that way they can create the movement. But still, it's always nice to, you know, always check to make sure that the individual bones are still good, if there's any weird stretching and stuff. But for the most part, usually when I do auto weight paint my stuff, depending, it usually works pretty fine, except on the base model. The base model is a different story. But so when it comes to just normal skirts, so if you're not, you know, rigging a dress, it's just a skirt only. Pretty much what you mainly just have to do is, you know, you could still, like, you know, follow along with the workflow. The one thing you wouldn't really do, I'll say, is you don't have to, like, do the whole body to dress transfer weights. You just pretty much have to just jump into this, doing the whole automatic weight paint, adjusting the weight paint to your needs, like, you know, depending on the movement you're doing, and that's kind of pretty much it. Now for the dress though, we will have to, you know, regardless of dress or skirt, if we're doing the auto weight paint, we'll have to still reattach it to the armature. So go ahead and do that. So select your skirt, and then your armature, and then Control J to join them back together. And you're going to have to reparent, which should be pretty easy, to reparent the skirt bones here. Make sure to select the parent bones here. And once you have that selected, whatever bone is closest to the parent, you know, the parent bones here, that will be basically the bone that you want to parent to. So for instance, you could have this parented to the hips if you wish, but because this is a lot more closer to this bone here, that's why I would parent this here. So there's that. I've also done something like this with my own model as well, so yep. And once you have that parented, make sure that also to double check at the hierarchy on here to make sure that the skirt is also underneath the armature here. If not, then you would just have to select the skirt, select the armature, Control P, and empty group so you don't mess with the current weight paint. So now that we've done that, what we have to do is we have to reconnect the skirt to the dress here. So that's what we're going to do. I'm gonna go ahead and hide this real quick. So basically just select your skirt, select the top part of your dress, and go ahead and connect these. So we're gonna, instead of manually merging each vertice, all you have to do is select a row of vertices that you split from, press the M button, and then merge by distance, and you're done. Simple as that. Also, depending on your model, you might want to reset vectors. So all you really have to do is Alt-N and then reset vectors. If you see any weird blotches or shadows pop up, that way your dress can still look pretty good, but you still have the weight paint, the new weight paint. And let's go ahead and do a little posing test with this. So, you know, select the parent bone, make sure that nothing's stretching, and for this case though, we can see that there is some stretching going on, and we're going to go ahead and figure out why that happened. So let's go ahead real quickly, see what caused that issue. Alright, so let's select that here. Now pretty much this is more of a troubleshooting step to kind of show you, like, if I see something crazy like this is how I would troubleshoot it. So let me double check. There you go. I forgot to remove the weight paint of the hips, and it looks a bit better. There's that one stretching here, which it's not from the spine, not from the chest, not from that one. Let's check. Let's keep checking around. So let me just go, because I still see some vertice selection here. You just scroll down. You can also just use the arrows to kind of like hold and kind of see like if there's any weight pains that pop up. That should be normal. Now, another thing too, which I also forgot to mention, is that if you, let's say you were moving your skirt bones and you see some weird stretching also, you can also smooth the weight pains as well, which should also fix the issue too, since not only the smoothing helps out, you know, make your weight pain look better, but sometimes, oddly, for some reason, it somewhat normalizes the weights at the same time. Not really, don't take my word on it, but usually, like, with how I do my rigging, I sometimes see it would fix up my issues. Also, I gotta make sure I disable the vertex selection. So, basically what I would do for the smooth vertex... Hold on a second. So basically what I would do, now make sure that you have the vertex selection disabled, and basically you'll be going to weights, you'll go to smooth, and make sure to select all groups at the subset. And I'm not sure why Blender keeps on enabling the goddamn vertex selection here when I don't want it, but smooth the weight pains, set the factor to 1, and you should have a much more better looking skirt. So that is very good. Now we're gonna go ahead and test it again. Move it around, move it to make sure it's all looking good. Make sure to also double check and move the leg so nothing got caught up in there. Because in case you're wondering how do you get where the legs don't clip into the skirt, you'll be using collider bones. Now for Blender's a little finicky when it comes to colliders, because I use the Wigglebone add-on, and because the sad part is the developer stopped updating the Wigglebone add-on, they never added the collision thing, which is pretty disappointing. It's really sad, but you know, it's okay, because there are other add-ons such as, I think, Dynamic Pro add-on that does some sort of collision. Also, from what I've tested, it was very finicky and I didn't like it, so I stick with Wigglebone just for, you know, just an easier setup that isn't too intense on my PC or something like that, or something too crazy of a setup. But if you really want to have colliders, I would recommend probably look into Rigidize, which Rigidize is a bigger pain. But if you know, once you learn about Rigidize, which I'm gonna be honest, there are tutorials about it, but not the, I don't know how to describe it, but not the tutorials that suit with what I'm looking for, which hopefully maybe in the future, if I can figure out the whole rigid body for bones and such that are more, you know, more in depth, maybe I might make a tutorial if I figure out something I still haven't, but I will make sure to do more research about it so I can help you guys. But till then though, I would recommend the Wigglebone add-on, which is in the description. So yeah, and let's also make sure to go ahead, select with our bone group here. And yes, when I did the reconnection with the armature, yes, it remembered the bone group. If it didn't, you'll have to re-register it, but it should be fine. And then go ahead and quickly test your skirt right here. And test it again, and you can see, you know, it does a pretty good job. And we can also quickly go ahead and add the physics for the skirt rig, so I'll show you. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to go to this tab here, Bone Properties, and select the Wigglebone. Make sure you select all your bones, select Wigglebone, and usually I would set the amplitude to 0 and stretching to 0 so it doesn't stretch like crazy, and that's kind of really it. Sometimes I would mess around with the stiffness and dampening, depending on, like, if, you know, hair, if the hair is a bit too crazy, like there's a lot of hair layers and stuff and I don't want it to clip with the body, sometimes I'll adjust these two, usually the amplitude, rotation. There's a tutorial in the description that also explains what each setting does exactly in depth, so you can also check that out. But you can, for now, you can stick with these settings just to start off with. And You just press on the play button by pressing the space bar, and you can, test out your physics here. Yes, there's already hair and stuff because I've rigged those already, but you can see, like, you can test out the physics, which, as you can see, it works really well, so the skirt rig is good. You can also, once again, do the same with the chest bones, hair, all that stuff. So yeah, that's the really good part about it. I also need to make sure I delete my notes here. But yeah, so at least we got that, and that looks pretty good. But now, the last thing I want to teach you is how do we get it, so something, let's say something like this crazy frick. How do we get this to follow the skirt? Or like chains, like if you have chains on your dress and stuff. And I'm gonna go ahead and apply the modifier to this, so because once again, like I said about the void bones, they are not proper element, left and right, so I would have to mirror it. Now, but basically, how would I do this? Usually, for the most part, I would just do a weight paint transfer with it, and I'll show you. So let's start off, simple. Little, I think a corset here, something like that, corset here. Make sure I apply the modifiers. And also another thing I need to mention too, I usually don't apply the solidify modifier because from my experience, usually for some reason the solidify, when you add the solidify modifier, because it's a double-sided, it makes the mesh double-sided, it would kind of confuse the weight paint transfer and such. Depends. Sometimes it may work, sometimes it may not. So just be aware about that. Usually just try to add the solidify modifier after you finish weight painting. But yeah, that's why I usually don't apply that one until the end. Just for convenience, just so that way nothing breaks and stuff. But yeah, and let's go ahead and quickly transfer the weights here. It should already have these settings that I told you earlier to put it. We'll also do the same thing with the with this over here, and we're gonna just quickly see how it looks. Now, once again, you might also want to do manual weight paint too. Keep that in mind. I'm just showing you like a more kind of automatic, somewhat manual, but also automatic way to just, if you want to make it a little bit more easier for you. But keep in mind, you might want to do some manual work with it. And pretty much, as you can see, with the weight paint transfer, you can see that the little beads here follow. And this also applies with chains, although I would say please make sure you have a decent amount of vertices of that way, because if you were to have super low poly beads for the dress, like super low poly beads, and you're putting it on a super high poly dress, it might not work. It might look weird. So make sure to, it's just up to your judgment really. Just balance it. Don't make it too high poly, but also don't make it too low poly. But once again, you just have to have a balance basically. As long as they work together in harmony, pretty much. It's more of a judgment thing in that case really. But yeah, and I'll also show you before we end this how the beads look like as the weight paint. Basically look like this when you have the weight paint transfer. You can also see this part here is kind of clipping a bit, so you might want to manually weight paint that. And if you want to know how to do manual weight paint, just make sure to select the part here. I'll show you quickly. Make sure that the vertex is not enabled. So that way you can have a bit more freedom on editing it. Find a vertex group that you want to edit. So for this case, we might want to use probably upper spine here perhaps. And you would just have to experiment with it. I can't really say on how to do it step by step, but I would say experiment with this part. Now usually for my weight paint settings, I will say too, I would always have the front faces section, the little checkbox here, disabled so I can paint through. I have also have projection here, or projected here, also selected, because by default it'll have sphere and front faces. If front faces and sphere is enabled, basically you'll only paint at the front, it will not go through. And usually I would usually when I weight paint, I like it to go through just like what 2.79 Blender did. So I usually just have those settings I have right now. So that way it's just easier for me. Now, also another thing too is that this this little X here, for mesh symmetry, this is actually pretty good if you have proper LNR bone rigs. And this is what I meant by, I highly recommend if you can manually name the bones, because for weight paint, if you want to make it more convenient for yourself, it's definitely important to have LNR naming, so that way it's just a lot more convenient for you. Otherwise, it's just going to be weird. And also, too, let's say I were to adjust this part of the dress, right? I manually weight paint it, let's say. The thing is that you also need to make sure the other side has the same pose, because if I have this pose and I'm making a weight paint and I have this part mirrored, it's going to really frick up the dress, especially since, you know, I didn't manually properly rename the bone. So please make sure if you're, I'll show you here, if you were to, you know, pose this and you weight paint this part and stuff, this will frick up. So in case you don't want to name the bones, if you don't want to rename the bones but you still want to like properly weight paint it, just make sure the copy was Control-C here, and then just paste it with the other side. But make sure, you know, depending on the side you're using, to make sure that you have either positive or negative, so change that. That way it's gonna be pretty good for you to weight paint now. But once again, please rename the bones if you can. But anyways, let's go back with the skirt I said we're going to adjust the weight paint for. So let's go here, weight paint, and let's give it a little test. So basically, if I were to weight paint this right now, you see that having it at 0.2 would basically make it where the part would dive inward. Basically, if it does that, the vertex group may not be the best, you know, that might not be the right vertex group. So just experiment. If it does this, check another one. Just keep experimenting, basically. And let's go ahead and see a little further. We might have to modify the front skirt here. Yep. So let's see. Let's adjust the strength and give it a test. Nope. Might want to increase it. Oh, there you go. We got somewhere. We got something. Maybe you might want to adjust a little more. Maybe that's a little too much though, but it is something. So there's that, and maybe you might want to test to see if removing this part might work. Nope, it doesn't. But yeah, pretty much basically have that sort of mindset like, oh, does this work? Nope, it doesn't. Just undo, continue on and experimenting. And also as for these other bones here, that's just the default Vroid bones for the skirt and stuff. These have no effect, although you can still remove these if you wish. But I will give one last tip though, because it'll take some time to correct this it'll take some time to fix this, but I can actually do video edit magic and fix it. And boom, basically I just fixed that with some video editing magic, but I'll tell you exactly what I did though, because I actually needed a little bit of time to fix that. But basically what I had to do was I had to fully select this part of the mesh. I had to manually, I had to remove the groups, you know, the vertex weight paint data for hip, spine, chest, upper chest, and then I had to scale out the corset a little bit bigger so that way it can look nicer for this, and it works, you know, you can see it works really well. And I might, once again, you might also want to fix some other stuff too, because, you know, auto weight paint is not super perfect, but it gets the job if you want to, you know, keep things simple. But if you want it even more proper, manual weight paint. And also just one last little trick I want to show you. One last trick. So like I mentioned about the vertex groups from, you know, the old Vroid skirt rig and the hoodie that they had on the original model. usually, you can always manually delete it like this, right? You could just do that. But there's actually a way of actually deleting these very quickly, actually. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to select the mesh, and make sure to also go to pose mode, select all your bones, but select your mesh, select your armature. You can also do this with your base model too, but although keep in mind, do one mesh at a time, since the weight paint, pretty much the weight paint here only applies to just one mesh at a time. But just to correct myself, it's armature to the dress, weight paint. You should have your bones selected here, right? You're going to go into weights. You're going to go into locks. And what you're going to do, is you're going to lock the selected. And basically, what you're going to see is that on the vertex groups here, the ones that are locked are the bones that you actually have in your armature. You could also, you can also be able to, let's say for the hair, you don't want the hair weight paint, vertex groups to be on the dress, so you can also manually select two, but for our case, we want to get rid of the original Vroid bone names that, was on the model. Basically what you'll do is you'll go here, click on the arrow, and then select on delete all unlocked groups, and boom, you're done. And then you have to make sure to go to locks again at weights and then unlock all. But overall, that's pretty much the whole tutorial. That's the guide on how to rig skirt rigs. I know that was a long tutorial, but I also wanted to cover some little tricks on weight painting the model and such. And yeah, there you go. I hope you enjoy your newly rigged skirt. I hope this tutorial helps you out and stuff, so you can be able to rig beautiful skirt rigs and stuff for your model. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to comment down your problems, if anything. But I do recommend, if you wish to send screenshots of your issues, or if you want to have a Discord call or something, like a screen share call, so I can help you a lot more better, then you can add me on Discord at kana_huyiko #7158. You can add me as a friend. I'll accept your request. I'll say, hey, what 3D help you need, and you just tell me, and we'll get the situation fixed. And make sure that on the screen here that my socials are there, so if you want to contact me, you can. If you want to suggest a tutorial or if you want to suggest something you want me to teach you, I will try my best to get that tutorial up. I might be a bit slow on the tutorial posting, but I will try my best to post as many tutorials as possible. But with that being said, though, have a lovely day, and hika sayonara, everyone. I hope to see you guys next time, alright? Goodbye!